Third time's a charm, ladies and gentlemen.
I clicked the button. It just didn't do it.
I know, it's true.
I have to be careful now with the way we got your camera.
I know.
Now, if I go
you're
out
gonna,
that side, I'm gonna block your woo.
Weston, we have a new way that we are doing our camera, and yeah, don't block my frame, dude. I need all of the frame. Anyway, welcome to Family Gaming Experience. This is the show where we talk about TTRPGs, advice, and gaming, and all that jazz through the lens of family friendliness. It's super fun. We love it.
We like families some of the time.
So,
depends on what my kids did that day.
depending on how well bedtime went.
How did bedtime go? Do I like family or not?
Do I like my children today or not? I love them all the time. Liking them is a totally different story. Anyway, we are welcoming to the channel for the very first time Dan from Almost Bedtime Theater, which is really fun.
Hello.
And we will have you do a intro here in un momento. Weston, do we have any announcements?
Announcements. We'll be here for our game on this Friday as we continue the story of the Scions for our Pathfinder 2nd Edition campaign. However, next week we will be not dark.
Hey, True Ferret.
But it will be a little different. We will be at the Fan X Expo here in Salt Lake. It is a comic book convention. It is one of the larger ones.
Yeah, for a hot second there, I don't know if it still is, but it was the second largest attended
comic book convention in the United States.
In the United States, outside of...
Yep, it was seconded only by San Diego. And then San Diego sued them, and there was a whole lot of drama.
So now it's Fan X instead of Salt Lake Comic Con. But we're going to be there next weekend, and we are super excited.
So we will be bringing you updates and cool things and photos and stuff from panels and all that as we cover the fan experience.
And if you guys happen to be there and see us, please come say hi and do little pictures.
Haley's making shirts, so you'll definitely,
not to sell, for us to wear. Identifiers.
So if you see us, but you're not, is that really them? You'll know because we'll be wearing it.
I know, we can't call it Comic-Con because San Diego sued. Freaking sucks.
Yep.
Stupid people. Anyway, but yeah, I think that's all we've got. Jerome is actually out tonight, but we have left his square open in memorandum of Jerome. He had the audacity to go to a comedy club tonight with his best friend, and that's lame.
How dare he?
Anyway, so I think that's all for our announcements for tonight.
Cue.
So bring in our dragon, please.
Dragon.
Fun fact about that little video, the dragon does not have a name.
Nope.
We need to name said dragon. So if you have an idea.
Yep, name the dragon. So drop it in the chat. What should we name the dragon?
Yeah, and then we're going to gather some names and then we're going to do a poll. I think we should call him Gerard.
No.
No? What about Geralt? Can we call him Geralt? Geralt of Rivia.
If this was not family friendly experience, I would say it a little differently. Freak.
No, that just doesn't work.
That doesn't work at all.
Without.
But no, we need to come up with a name. Puff. Yeah, Puff. No, Puff.
Can't call him Puff because then everybody thinks it's gonna think this show is about
other things,
other types of puffing.
So so let's bring forth and let's talk a little bit about and introduce Dan. Now that Haley decided to keep this less family friendly, we'll introduce Dan. Hopefully he can recover us.
I seem to be the person nowadays that just like derails
You
everything.
are.
I'm sorry. Anyway, Dan, hi. Hi. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for being here. So tell us, give any viewers who may not know who you are or what the Almost Bedtime Theater podcast is all about.
Right. So Almost Bedtime Theater Podcast is a role-playing game podcast that I and my daughter started a couple of years ago now. And it was a project that she actually came up well, let me take a step back. One of the ways that she really got excited about Dungeons and Dragons in particular was by listening to the Dungeons and Dragons and Daughters podcast.
I know them.
And yes, and she was just absorbing that. And one day she says, "I want to. Can we do a podcast?" And then, as
the girl after my own heart.
I try to do when she's excited about something, it's like, sure, let me just Google how to do that. This might take a little while, but then we had this conversation about what kind of podcast do you have in mind? What do you want to try to do? And we ended up talking about gaming, and one of the things that had come up, and the reason how I found the Dungeons and Dragons and Daughters podcast was that I, being into gaming, would listen to a lot of different podcasts. And unfortunately, none of them were podcasts I was willing to let roll for my 9-year-old,
Nope.
8-year-old at that time.
We get that because like our 10-year-old knows Critical Role, but I don't think has ever listened to Critical Role.
I think Scanlan is
There
a
you go.
perfect role model for young children.
And so case in point, I was like, well, what if we were to do a role-playing game podcast? Because we were already playing role-playing games. That was something we were doing. We have fun with. And of course, given where she was coming from in the first place, yeah, that sounded like a good time to her. And we really didn't, I'm going to say we a lot. I really didn't know what I was doing. But she was happy to go along with the ride. And we came up with some ideas. Would it be a podcast where we were talking about how to do it? Would it be a podcast where we would have actual plays? What were we going to do? So it was a little bit of this and that. And I also spend a bit of time on Reddit, where I had seen, especially as things were moving into the pandemic, there were a lot of people on there who would be asking, it's like, my kid wants to play. How do I get started? Or I want to teach my younger sibling, my kid, whomever, how to play, because I used to like to play. Where do I start? And it seemed to me like having something there then that could help folks either who don't know what they're doing with role-playing games, they're just getting started, as well as the children, or they're wanting to just try to figure out how to transition those skills they may have in playing with an adult group to playing with younger players.
Which is definitely a transition.
Different.
It's
difficult.
very different.
We'll get into that a little later, but yeah, it's very different.
And so that's where we ended up, was like, well, let's just do it. And I have to admit, a lot of my reasoning at the time was I already had some recordings of us playing, because for me, that was just a fun thing to have. The first time she ran a game for me, I so wish I had that on tape somewhere, because it was just awesome. I immediately wrote it all up. It's like everything I could remember. So I had some record, but then I wanted stuff, just keepsakes for myself, if nothing else. And I figured no matter where we go with this podcast, I'll have those.
Yes.
And then it's been on again, off again, as schedules allow, and as interest has been there, or other things have come up that have been more interesting. But now we've got a collection of, I think, like 17, 18 of them now, somewhere in there, varying from just me talking a bit about how to more and more now the actual plays, which has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and you guys have guests as well too. It's not normally just the two of you, right?
Originally, it very much was, but the last few, we've had her cousin. So that's been really awesome getting to play with her, because we live 1,500 miles apart, and normally we'd make those trips back home every year. We'd get a couple weeks back home. When pandemic hit, we weren't doing the flights and stuff, and so it was a way we actually got to. I got to know my niece better. Rachel got to talk to her cousin on a weekly basis, and we have this handful of actual podcasts available, but we play like often we'll play and it's not recorded. We
Yeah.
just play and have fun, because sometimes that's what you're looking for, without the extra paraphernalia.
It gets kind of stressful, and you have to get really good at ignoring like things like the microphone, or like in our case the cameras, and just trying to actually get focused. And I can imagine it's even harder if you're trying to do all of that with a kid.
Yeah, because I gotta imagine, like, I look at
Hey, Flyboy.
hey, we, like, for us, even, like, we're two adults, we get on here, we do this, and doing it week after week, it's like some weeks you're just like, I don't want to do this week.
Yeah, we
I can only imagine with a child.
No, that's cool. So do you guys?
Some weeks we play Mario Kart.
There we go.
Yes. Oh my gosh, there are some weeks where I feel like, hey, could we just like we can stream, but could we just stream like Diablo or something? Like,
Wouldn't be quite on the family-friendly side, that one, but
emotionally overwhelmed sometimes. Hello, Home de Vivo. Oh wait, I said that wrong. Home Devo.
Home Divivo.
Whatever. Leave me alone.
I feel like I'm on that. What is it? Bruce Almighty, where
Oh
he takes
my gosh,
control of the
yes.
anchor.
Yes.
Being and
It's Bruce Almighty, and then what's the Evan? Is Evan Almighty the second one?
yeah, where he's like
Yeah,
Noah.
because it's Evan that he
does that too.
He did that too. Oh my gosh, Jim Carrey, man.
But yeah, I mean that is the thing. Like you said, there's sometimes even as adults. But I love what you said. You know, if you're playing with kids, don't expect that every week on that day when you generally play that they're going to want to that week.
Or that they're going to be ready to.
And I loved what you said there about, whatever she's more interested in. Maybe sometimes she's more interested in other things at the time. Do you find, because this is, again, one thing, as parents, like, oh, we're going to start playing this, we're going to play it every, Friday. Forcing that, I think, actually has the negative effect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You don't want it to be a chore.
No.
Yeah. Because you start playing because you want to, and you guys enjoy playing together. Because I don't know, how long are your guys' sessions normally, either recorded or not recorded, just across the board playing with a child?
It varies. Certainly early on, I would say, early on, you were talking like 15 to 30 minutes when she was a lot younger.
Yeah.
I think we're at the point now where if things are interesting and exciting and moving along, hour and a half is doable. By the end of that time, it's like, yeah,
I don't really care
tired.
anymore.
We're kind of done.
I'm just gonna,
Yeah.
And then I don't think we said how old she is yet.
Oh, I'm sorry. Rachel is now 11.
Okay.
Okay, and she's been playing with you since she was...
I think she was about 5 when we started just doing like what we call the story game.
Fine.
You're telling a story and you'd have decision points and we roll dice, like a couple D6s or something like that, doing some math, throwing that in there, and just figure out what's going this way, what's going that way, and then progressively got into more and more complex game mechanics as we went along, as that became fun to do that as well.
Yeah. So did you start with her playing, was it more like a collaborative storytelling where you just like, so this happens and then what do you do kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I love that.
I'm very interested in this, and I want to kind of use this as an opportunity to pick up some what's to do, because right now we've got...
I can't handle this anymore. Your camera is totally crooked.
You need the waving it around.
I feel like it's crooked now. I was like...
Hold on. I'm going to make it worse, though, because I want to show you guys a beautiful shelf that I made. Hold on.
She's going to derail. That's actually a real shelf.
That's a real shelf.
Wow.
I built that. I made it.
Yeah, you can't really tell, but there's an actual shelf merged in with the decor. That's,
and it's a black
wrong.
and it's a black and orange Christmas tree. That's a Halloween tree, and that's a Jack Skellington pumpkin head. And I painted the Jack Skellington pumpkin head
did?
because what it came from
Nice.
the Dollar Tree was horrible, and I made what's behind me. Okay, I'm done.
I think on this other side, though, Haley, you have a squirrel.
Shut up.
And there's a squirrel right there.
Look, all of our viewers know that the ADHD is strong with me.
Yes, they do. But Dano, I wanted to ask a question. So you've definitely been playing with her for a number of years. Seen her development, how you played with her at 5, how you play with her now. So like we've got a 10-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we do.
And so I try and play with the kids.
We played pretty consistently there for a little bit, and then
Well, it's difficult. It is difficult because I've got the 10-year-old who is very analytical and is like, this is the way you do it. And then I've got the 6-year-old. Then I've got the 6-year-old who's like, what do? Well, I take my panda. You have a panda? Yes, I take my panda. And then I hit it with my panda.
So your sword is called Panda. No, it's a panda. It's like, oh my gosh. Okay. Okay, so you hit it with the panda. That's also a sword. But you hit it with the panda.
And so there is like a very different way. If you want to introduce this to your kids and play with your kids, you can't approach it in the here's what the player's handbook says way.
Yeah.
So how do you if you're getting into this, you got a young kid, you're like, I love D&D, I want to play, but like what do I bring with me from the game, and what do I have to just leave in that book and not worry about it?
Yeah, and a lot of this, of course, is going to depend on your kid because they are wildly different. I would say the key thing, especially at those younger ages, is to find what they're interested in. And I will toss out that there are a ton of games out there. D&D is not your only choice. And
that is true.
Especially if you're trying to introduce something that is a lot lighter in rules, but still has a set, especially if you got a rules lawyer or one in training, it's like, okay, well, here are the rules. Now, the rules are a whole lot simpler, but these are the rules. So if that's what's important to them, is that there's a set of rules, they've got them. But you have ultimately a much simpler game in terms of if you've got somebody who's they're just going to announce, I've got a sword, it's a panda, and I'm using it. That will work fine in this game. There's nothing that says they can't. And some games it actively encourages that kind of response, that kind of play.
Because we started our 10-year-old, we started him on Pathfinder 1st edition, which is even more rules intensive than D&D 5th edition. And so that's kind of where he started at.
And then we moved to 2nd edition Pathfinder,
which isn't as bad as 1st edition, I would say, as far as the
once you understand the formatting, I actually think it's much easier to
but
pick
it's still like, I know there are lots of systems out there. Like I know the Powered by Apocalypse is lighter. There's the Fate system, from what I understand, is fairly light on the rules. And then there's a whole bunch you can find. Friend of the channel on TTRPG Kids has their amazing list of all the different games, and they're constantly adding new ones.
Yep, she's constantly updating that thing with she's amazing.
Like Hayley found the other day at our game store the
My Little Pony.
Yeah, the My Little Pony.
I want to do it so bad. You have.
Are you aware of Pony Finder? It's Pathfinder My Little Pony mashup.
Oh no!
So I get paid tomorrow, and I'm an adult.
Disclaimer: I've never seen it. I've never actually read it or used it myself. But it's out.
What is your aspiration in life? To play a My Little Pony. I want to be. Pinkie Pie. Is that the one that?
Pinkie Pie is my spirit animal.
Yes.
She is like. Oh my! I do say something that is directly from her, from the TV show, and it's the combination of nervous and excited. It's nervous-sighted. So whenever I'm excited or nervous about something, I'm like, oh, it's nervous-sighted. I'm nervous-sighted. I've made it a thing in my own life. I love Pinkie Pie and her obsession with cupcakes. You should not have brought this up. Now everybody knows how nerdy I am.
They didn't know from all the other streams we do.
No, they all thought I was super cool.
Oh, thank you for the follow.
My goodness, you guys with these screen names that I can't ever pronounce. Hold on, let me try this. Okay, hold on. Lapine, hit. I don't know what this is. How do you say this name? Lapinhim. Apparently someone you know,
Or is it
Dan.
Hime?
Says Dan knows many secrets, finds the best systems.
So Wednesday nights is usually our game night. So my game group is sneaking in, I think.
Oh.
Sneak in, embarrass him, do
Please.
all of the things.
You can post anything here, so this is your chance to embarrass him. And
Put him on the
They are
spot.
a wonderful group.
this is when you can
They, put up
reveal
with a
that
lot of
he
things
is.
that I've come up with.
This is where you can reveal that he's actually a Twilight Sparkle fan in the closet, and nobody knew.
Okay, I legit thought you were going like Twilight and then like Sparkle, like Vampire Sparkle, and I was like, whoa, Weston's really going out on a limb with this one.
No, I was sticking with the My Little Pony.
Sticking with the theme.
Twilight Sparkle is pretty cool.
No.
I mean, she's
I was going
the
with the
lead.
sparkly squirrel. That's the one I was going with.
You with the freaking squirrel.
Because it's sparkly, so there's a shiny thing and a squirrel.
Oh my gosh.
worst.
Okay. So, Dan, what systems have you played with your daughter? And if you've played different ones, which one do you feel like has been a better one for kids?
Right. Okay. Well, we started out. I mean, obviously, there's a handful of them on the podcast. So we've got Dungeons and Dragons on there because we have had to do that one. But we have played. Let's see. A lot. We, especially with the podcast, it has given us a chance to dip our toes in and find a lot of these wonderful little games where it's not a game where here are the rules, you can create any character and sandbox world kind of situation. It's more, here's the story, here's the scenario, run with it. Some of those are just wonderful. So, for example, I can highly recommend Stacks of Goblins.
Stacks of Goblins.
Stacks of Goblins.
Okay,
Oh, that one's a hoot.
Is it?
That's
I'm going to look these up.
We're going to look this up because, like I said, we've got this
RPG.
issue with our little boy gaming group that we're trying to do. And so the one is getting into the rules and the other one is just wanting to be crazy. And you brought up a really good point there. And I had never thought about, well, if I show Michael this other system that is very rule light, he can be a rule lawyer, but because it's a rule light system, it will keep, it from getting intense. And our younger children can be a little bit more like, have their pandas.
It's a panda.
Which is weird because he never brings up pandas anywhere else.
Never before had he ever talked about a panda, and suddenly out of nowhere he's like, "There's no freaking panda." Okay, so we've got Stack of Goblins.
Yep, that one's by Cobblepath Games, and it is you are a stack of goblins. You're X number of goblins, however many people are playing. You're that many goblins in a trench coat, and you are pretending to be human. And you are out to find the Goblin King has told you this is what I want. Each of you think it's something else, and you're not even all sure that it's what he really said because you weren't really paying attention. So each goblin has their own goal of this thing they're supposed to get for the Goblin King. And they have a goal that's the thing they want just because they want it. And there's these wonderful lists in there. It's like, I want a bag of ferrets. I want, a goat to ride home on
because
his
who
triumph.
wouldn't want a bag of ferrets?
Oh, it's just
We
wonderful
have
lists.
We have a ferret here. We got a ferret in the stream.
We do?
True ferret.
Oh, we
True
do.
ferret.
We have True Ferret. We found the ferret. We're good. Campaign done.
Yeah, there you go. So it's got all these great tables you can roll on to develop this crew of goblins you got. And what's really cool about it is then you go out and each goblin is playing a different role. You have the goblin that's the feet. You have the goblin that's the head and is running the little, like the candy clippers for arms.
Yeah.
The sticks with the grippers on the end. You got one of those for each hand for your arms. And then you have whatever goblins are left are in the middle. And as you go around, the whoever is playing the goblin that's the feet is basically more of the GM role. They're deciding where you're headed because they get to decide where you're going and what's going on.
That makes sense.
And then the goblin that's the head, that's the one that's doing most of the roles. It's like interacting and like skill checks kind of stuff. And the goblins in the middle can decide either to help or hinder those checks,
See,
because if it's going towards their goal, they'll help. And then as things happen, the goblins change places. So you have the opportunity, everybody can be the DM for a little bit, or everybody can be the goblin at the top, but you have some control. So you get to decide where you want to move to. So if you never want to be the one running things, it's like, you don't ever have to be the goblin at the feet. And then you go off and you do this task, go do this quest, and then you run home. And so that's one of the ones we've done an actual play of. If you want to hear it in action, it's a grand time.
We're gonna have to go hear that.
I know. It's available on Stitch.io or itch.io.
Itch.io.
So bad at this stuff. So if you're interested, like I am, I just dropped it in the chat. So.
Well, and I love what
like
you said.
I may be buying
it's
this
a
one.
it's a very linear, but it is here's your objective, go do it. Because that's one thing. Also, as I'm like, okay, we're gonna. We started with I'm like, well, we're just going to keep it simple. I'll pull out the starter set. But even the starter set for D&D has a lot of nuance and choice and things like that can be very difficult for a young kid to pick up on and to know what to do. And when you leave it, I've even seen this with adults who haven't played before. When you leave things wide open, it can be like,
they don't know what to do.
I don't know what to do. Like Haley's mother was totally this way. First time she tried to play with us, she's like, "So wait, what do I do? Like, do I move 3 steps and then roll a dice and then that tells me what I do? No. What do you want to do?"
She was.
What do you mean?
She was fun.
This is like,
she was fun.
And so having something that's a little bit more clear objective, but silly, something kind of silly, something kind of funny that will have their attention. Because that's the other thing, like you said, it's got to keep their attention.
Does. And you mentioned playing with adults who have never played before. One that we found, it's called Under the Floorboards. That's another one I can point out. It's one where you've got you're playing the little people that live in a house, like the littles or the borrowers or
I was supposed to say like the borrowers.
Yeah, exactly. So that's who you are. You're the little people hiding in the house. The humans don't know you're there.
Wait, and so what's it called again?
Under the Floorboards.
Okay, there we go.
And that's one that we played with Rachel's great-grandmother, and over video chat, like over Skype. Your character has a handful, I think it's like 6 or 7 stats that you have. It's just like +2, 0 kind of stuff. And you're just running around having a grand time in the house. You've got some sort of quest. You come up, it's like, okay, we really need a piece of soap. Okay. And you've got these challenges that come up and stuff. And it's another one of those where, you have a more focused concept, and it's not difficult to kind of just get into that story mode of you're saying, well, what do you want to do? Because there's a few places where, okay, we're going to roll the dice and see, do you succeed? Or that's something I'd like to talk about actually in a little bit. Success versus failure when you're doing checks. Because I've learned a lot about how to handle that playing with kids that I then translated over to playing with adults. I think it's worked well. But that's one that that might also work well. And it's got some more complicated rules to it where you can get into using luck and so on if you want. But I would say, as always, if your rules lawyer will allow you, use the rules that work for your group.
Yeah.
Right. If there's something in there, it's like that's just a step too much. I don't want to worry about it. Don't worry about it. Play the game the way that works, especially when you've got little ones involved.
No, it's true. Lapine. I'm just going to call you Lapine because I don't know how to say the last second half of it. Unless you give me the IPA direction on how to say the name, I'm just going to go with Lapine. It says, don't forget to tell them about nothing but the tooth.
Ah, right. One of the things that I ran into that for me was difficult is I'm a prepper. I've gotten better, but I will prep so hard for a game, especially early first sessions and so on. before I can relax a little bit and just trust myself. But what I was running into, especially in the early days, is Rachel would say, "Oh, I want to play." I'm like, "Cool, okay. I'll get something put together, And then that evening, and at that point, I mean, if you waited 30 minutes, then it's like, oh no, now we're doing something else.
Yep.
So I needed to have something so that when I got that, I want to play, like in 5 minutes or less, I'm ready, right?
True.
I can just grab it and do it.
Because you can't like schedule it out. It's like, oh, you want to play? All right. Well, you know what? 2 days from now at 6 o'clock, we'll get together and play. Because 2 days from now at 6 o'clock, they've forgotten that. And now they're on the Mario Kart.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So Nothing But the Tooth was my first attempt at creating basically a one-pager adventure.
Oh.
That had all of the stuff that I was going to want. And it's available. You can get it through the podcast links, our Buzzsprout podcast links. It is episode 3. In the notes there is a link to that. Then there was a second one in episode 7, and it's a front and back. It's got basically a story, some questions to get things started. So you're asking the players questions to kind of get them in, and how's this all starting off? Gives you essentially some NPCs, some rooms, and little bits and stuff, just enough, at least for me. It's descriptions, little sensory tidbits, so that you have something to run with.
Yeah.
And create this story to go along with. And then ultimately that one I submitted to the one-page dungeon contest last year. And so it's in that pile too. A revision of it with a map.
That's awesome. Oh,
Yeah,
I just found it. Okay, I'm going to drop the link in the chat.
Drop it like
Thank
a
you.
hat.
Drop it like a hat. That is really cool. Well, and I think that's an interesting thing with like kids too, which you say is like when they have an interest, you have to capitalize on that at the time. Especially the younger they are, the less you're able to push off the gratification of playing. When things like that happen when she was younger, when you guys would play, would it just be like a spur of the moment, like, hey, we're doing the dishes right now, let's do this, or like you're jumping on the trampoline and whatever? Like, how did you guys kind of induct her into playing?
I think the earliest thing was we had a cardboard box about yay big that we used duct tape and made it look like a die. So that would get thrown around, and it's like, well, that's been fun. Now that we know what all the numbers are, let's do something with
true.
Because if you can use duct tape on something, we'll go for it.
Play a game that takes D6s, but it's like this big of a dice, and you play it in like a room-sized setup.
Oh, that
like
would be
dodgeball.
So fun. Dodgeball.
That's what it would become with our 3 sons.
With our 3 boys,
with
it
our
would
3
be
boys,
fun. Try
it
and
would
peg
totally
each
be
other.
that.
Peg each other. I've thought about buying those oversized, like the giant foam ones. It's like the RPG sets, so it has all 7 die in it. But
you even buy just
was
the D6
like,
and you just play with D6 is what it would be like. Okay, roll to see if you hit. Okay, I'm gonna see if I hit.
Like,
whack,
oh my God.
Brother in the face.
So many shades of
No. But no, you're 100% right, because like, well, and with the prep, also as a kid, most of those details that like really immerse the adult in it, they don't.
The kids don't get.
They don't even like. Whoosh.
Right over their head.
And one of the things that Rachel and I ended up having some really good conversations just about playing and so on. And one of the things that came up after we'd been playing for a little while, we had been doing the D&D series, and she said, one of the things that was tough from her perspective, playing just with the 2 of us, was how often she wanted to be the silly one, but she wanted to do the smart thing with her character. And so she was torn between doing the thing that was probably the right answer and just being silly. And that was a real light bulb moment for me, because I figured, okay, she's playing how she wants to play, but she was trying to play it right. And so we had a conversation after that, and it's like, okay, A, if you want to be silly, go silly.
Do what you want.
We're here to have fun. But B, that was one of the things that started inspiring me to, it's like, well, who else could we drag into this? So that sometimes it wasn't just the two of us, or, sometimes we can, her mom likes to play games also. So she's definitely into the RPGs. So we get her, but giving Rachel that chance to be the wacky one when she felt that there should be a serious side, but also sometimes you just got to hit something with a panda, right? So
yes,
it's all,
I think
take it in stride.
Haley, can you
necessary.
speak to this situation?
I have no idea what that's like. It is a foreign concept. No, I so get that. Working or playing one-on-one together, it's difficult for certain things, and then just absolutely beautiful with other scenarios. And I'm sure playing with a young child when it's just one-on-one is gotta be so freaking fun, because their imaginations are just jumping all over the place, and you're holding on for the ride, and you're like, okay, let's go there, let's do that. But I get that impulse of wanting to do it, wanting to be the player and playing it right, or playing it the way that makes the most sense logically, but you're not necessarily wanting to go that way. Because I've definitely had moments with our one-on-one, which is just the two, or it's one-on-one, it's just the two of us on Friday nights. Like, sometimes I want to do the contrarian thing, but because it's just me making the decisions, I kind of can't.
Well, you want to do contrarian, but also it's the fact that, like, you can't lean on anyone else to make the decision. It's like when you've got a party of 4 or 5, you kind of have a consensus together. And if you screwed up, well, I guess we all kind of did that. But when it's just the one-on-one, and
that was my decision.
Killed your character by jumping into the pool of lava accidentally.
I've not done that.
No.
I have not done that. I just want to clarify that
now.
I'm
just thinking of, like, our sons. Like, if we were playing in Michael, just think about Michael with how intense. Our oldest gets very intense, very much involved in it. If all of a sudden he made this choice and that resulted in his player dying or something like that, he would
be so upset.
He would have such a hard time with that. Whereas if it's all the group and something happens, it's easier to kind of just let it go. We started this and did one-on-ones, not realizing there are definite advantages to having more than one person there. Plus, you're right, the silliness factor. You don't, when you're like the main character, you watch a movie, main character, okay, the main character, they're pushing things forward. They're not just being the silly comic relief. I'm playing in a campaign.
That's the sidekick.
Yeah,
exactly.
I'm playing in a campaign right now where my character is chaotic good. And I kind of based the character off, like, Ryan Reynolds characters that he plays in movies and stuff like that.
When Ryan Reynolds is allowed to just be Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah.
And so I'm doing goofy stuff all over the place, and half the time I'm derailing the, like, moving forward of the story. It makes for very fun moments, but if it only had that character, it would get old so fast. It only works if it has a straight man to play against.
Yeah.
And so I totally see that. I know we're going to be adding more guest appearances into our show for this very same reason. One-on-one is awesome, especially I imagine when you're first teaching and you're first getting them in, and because then they're the whole focus. Your character is everything. Whereas, like, I see sometimes with our boys when we play, like, Michael will be playing, and then it's Gabriel's turn, and Michael still wants his character to be getting the focus.
Doing stuff, yeah.
And so there's some of that definitely doing one-on-ones I think is really good, but also giving them that chance to interplay with each other. And I know one thing we're struggling with in this is our boys, since there are 3 boys, they are used to competing. But when you're
obnoxious.
When you're in the party and you're trying to get them to cooperate and make it to where it's a cooperative thing, that has been a real struggle. It's like they want to turn and PvP it. Like, we're fighting the orcs, the goblins, and then suddenly he wants to turn and hit his brother's character with the greatsword. It's like, no.
And if we don't let him, then he just does it in real life and smacks his brother. And it's just like, oh my gosh. Mass pandemonia happens at the table.
So what was your experience going from the one-on-ones to bringing in another player there?
It worked really well. We played for several months with somebody we'd met online. There was another kid from online. So we had Rachel and Leah and this other kiddo. And we did D&D for multiple months. And I think it went pretty well. I could definitely see at that point where it did open it up, to that point of, you don't always have to be the one making the right decision. And that was very much embraced. So that worked well. And then now that we're running with just Rachel and Leah generally, I think it's fun. It's as you say, it's a different feel. Absolutely. And Rachel and I still sometimes do, things where we'll work on something together, but it's working out pretty well.
That's awesome.
Now, one thing you said before that you would get into later is
it's later now,
is
apparently.
skill checks. However,
Successes versus failures.
yeah, successes versus failure, because I know with kids, this is definitely something that you've got to play it the right way. Otherwise, it can get very difficult for the kid. I've found.
Yeah.
But
yes, the kid.
Before we get into that, we're gonna take a 5-minute break.
Oh, we are taking a commercial break. It's not a commercial break. We're not sponsored by anyone. If you would like to sponsor the family gaming experience, please feel free to contact me and let me know. Oh my gosh, I'm in such a weird mood tonight.
So we're gonna take a 5-minute break. We will be right back in 5 minutes, just so that way everyone can go use the restroom and everything like that. And then we will come back and we will talk about how to handle success and failure in playing
With
TTRPGs with
children.
children.
Welcome back. We are back.
Yes, we are. All right, so we were going to get into success and failure because this is definitely one, in D&D, there is this idea that you need to, the reason why TPKs and stuff like that happen is because, failure needs to be felt, that there needs to be a success, there needs to be failure, it needs to be won, and you did the right thing in order to get it in a way, but when you're dealing with little kids, they can get demotivated very, very quickly.
Yes.
And so you got to handle it with kid gloves, I would say.
Kitty
So Dan,
gloves.
tell us some of your wisdom, oh wise one.
Somehow you've become like the expert.
Isn't that why we invited him on the show? I thought
The expert is the person who's one page ahead. That's all it is.
Hey, that's what Frank Abagnale did. That's how he could be
Right.
a BYU professor, was because he read the chapter ahead of the students.
Oh, if anyone's wondering who that
There you
is,
go.
that's the.
Who doesn't know who Frank
There are people who
Abagnale
don't.
is?
The character that the movie Catch Me If You Can was based off of.
Wait, hold on. Dan, do you know who Frank Abagnale is?
I do.
Okay.
Yes, I do.
Yeah,
Am I just aging myself really intensely that I know who Frank Abagnale is, and I just assume everybody else does?
No, it's because we live by a place that was affected by him.
I just
Ah,
we live in Salt Lake City, Utah, and so he taught at BYU, which is just around the mountain from us.
Yeah, I went to school there, so
So, and I have like multiple siblings who have gone there too. So,
it's one of those stories that people tell.
yep. Anyway.
Yep.
So, wise one. Talk
Right.
about failures
Right.
and successes, and how do you handle that with kids without crushing their souls?
certainly, and just so that I'm continuing to stick in the self promotion. Episode 8, and I've provided a link to that episode
awesome.
and our Stacks of Goblins actual play episode. If you want to pick up on those.
Awesome.
But episode 8 is about those bad rolls because we'd actually. This was inspired by one of the games that we did, and it was just bad roll after bad roll after bad roll.
Haley, what's that like?
If a few of you guys have caught the last couple of sessions that we've had, the dice hate me, legit. Either digital or physical dice, they legitimately hate me. And I've done other sessions with literally other games on other people's channels, and they still hate me. It's fine.
It's okay. Deep breaths.
So Dan, how do I not crush her soul?
How do we do that? So I think that the thing that I guess the mentality that I've ended up at, not only through these games with Rachel, but also then applying it to the games that I run for older people, for adults, is that it's that idea of separating whether the die roll is a success or failure, so that the player's success or failure and the character's success or failure as being two different things within say D&D, especially when you're talking about combat, where each swing of the sword or every arrow you shoot is a die roll, and that says yes or no, did you hit? It's very easy to take that mindset and then apply it to, say, skill checks. But it doesn't have to be the case. And so this is something, admittedly, I'm pulling from playing a lot of different other games, where I'm taking that role that you did as a player, and you failed. You didn't hit the threshold you were aiming for. It doesn't mean that the character failed at their attempt necessarily. It's just permission to me, as the person running the game, to make things more interesting. And that may be that you failed, but maybe not. So let's take, for example, the idea that your character's trying to pick a lock on this door. Y'all got to get through this door. And it's a DC 15, and you roll that 12. Now what?
Yep.
And
we all know doors, the bane of Critical Role, Vox Machina. Doors are the worst thing.
That'll never not be funny.
Forget the Tarrasque. Avoid a door.
Oh my gosh, that was the fun. And if you watched the TV show, the animated series, they so beautifully rolled that into the series,
It was
the
there.
stupid doors. Like, it was so funny. But I've experienced that. I really have experienced that multiple sessions in a row where it doesn't work. So I think, Weston, you should listen to this idea that maybe it's not that you automatically fail. That's at getting away from the banshee's hair that's wrapped around you, and you rolled it 7 times.
It was a Rusalka.
Sorry. Anyway, go ahead.
Very good. Very good. Now that the audience is invested.
I know.
And so, I mean, I know when I play, and unless I'm actually playing somebody who's not competent at what they're trying to do, it feels, it's like, I've got that really high score at pick and locks. This is my jam. Here we go. And of course, that's the time you rolled a 2, whatever. And what I like to do is, there's an article, I want to say it's the Alexandrian.net is a blog. There is an article about dice. I can try to look it up for you. Haven't looked that one up in a while, but it's the concept of the character can be plenty competent, but they had, I wanted to say it was the luck dice or something, but it was a way of saying, here are all the other things that could go wrong. It's not your character's fault. They made the perfect throw of that dagger, but a bird flew in the way of it, or just it was perfectly precise, but it wasn't strong enough, or the person you threw it at is just that good too. You're both super competent, and they knocked it out of the air. So it was all these different ways you could approach this idea of, you're competent, you did your job right, but that lock is just, it's rusted. I mean, it's a lock you could totally pick, but it's rusted tight and you can't get in there, or your lock pick's broke, or you successfully unlocked the lock with a very loud clonk. Oh, thank you so much.
They found it. I was just looking for it. Dice. Oh,
yes,
Dice
of Destiny. There we go.
Yep.
Perfect.
Cool.
I love my support.
Oh, it's very supportive. I'm over here trying to find it, and I'm like, I think I know what this is.
Or you went in there, you picked that lock so fast, you've got this down. It was a very loud clunk, and now you hear the steps of the guards coming to see what's going on. So it's not necessarily you failed at the lock. It's just, what can I do to make this more interesting or more complicated for the character? I've even done recently taking the idea of progress clocks. So you have some big event that you're working towards, and periodically you're notching that clock a step further along, closer and closer to this big event. Sometimes it's like, you unlocked that lock, everything went perfectly smoothly as far as you know, and then over here I'm filling in one of those little clock ticks.
Butterfly
like,
flaps.
Things just got a little more complicated off screen, and they don't know it yet.
Butterfly flaps its wings and causes a tsunami, and chaos theory.
Isn't that the thing where it's like, it seems to be? It's like if a GM says it seems to be a door.
Yeah.
That you're like, oh my gosh, it's a freaking mimic. It's a mimic.
It's a mimic.
Yeah.
Well, and I like that you said there, because like the dice don't have to indicate how well you did. They have to do with how did circumstance line up.
Sure.
You're in this big barroom brawl, stuff's flying everywhere. You throw your dagger, it sails through the air, it's perfectly on point, and then someone threw a table leg that connected with it and knocked it out of the way. So then you don't feel like, because there's that connection that does happen with your character, you don't feel like you screwed up. Life just happened.
And then your character remains competent. Your character is still awesome, but things happen.
Yeah.
Luck didn't go your way.
Well, and that's a hard thing when you have a succession of bad rolls, where it just feels like, as the player, and I'm sure everyone has experienced this, it's just very fresh in my mind. I played Vampire the Masquerade on Saturday, and I got what was the D&D equivalent of a nat 1 probably
3 times
in a row. So not just like, and then it was like I had like 1 success on like the next 2 rolls, and it was like I was so angry And it didn't have anything to do with the game itself. It was just more the fact that like my dice hated me. And people were saying like, put him in dice jail. I'm like, it's my phone. How do I put my phone in dice jail?
So there's an app we need.
Yep.
Oh
there my
gosh.
I need to build that.
Weston, I know you were there. You saw my face.
So this is where, well, I love the idea, and I'd noticed this as well. This is one thing that, of course, Hayley doesn't realize that I have been involved in our game at multiple instances.
Where I should have died?
Possibly. Case in point, falling off of the Darklands road.
Yeah, that was bad.
So, but where, like, a great example you gave was like, the picking the lock. Maybe instead of, okay, I roll in that one. Okay, if they don't pick, because also as a GM and a DM, you don't want to put yourself in the corner. Like, you can put yourself in a corner to where you're like, I built everything to where they have to get through this one obstacle, and they roll a bunch of nat ones, and now all of a sudden, you kind of put yourself in a sticky situation based on that. You don't want to do that to yourself, but it can be instead, you go pick the lock, nat one. Okay, the lock tricks, but you slice your hand open on the rusty metal or something like that. Take roll d6, take 5 points of damage. Something negative does have to happen. I think that's we can agree on that. Something negative does have to happen with the bad roll, but that something negative doesn't have to be failing at the check.
Right. Or you got it open, it took you a minute, and now the people on the other side of that door, they're ready and waiting for you, not you're sneaking up on them. Or, yeah.
So would you also do that on the opposite side with nat 20s or like really high rolls? It's not always just that, like, yes, you succeeded and you opened the lock or you popped the chest or whatever. Would you add stuff to that too?
Absolutely. And part of that for me, I know there's not in 5e, it's not that critical success at a skill check idea, but a number of games that I play, and it gets into some of that, especially like Powered by the Apocalypse and games that have evolved from that, where it's the idea of you have these levels of success. So you succeeded with a complication, or you succeeded, or you have an extreme success. And so I do like that too, where if the luck's in your favor right now, sure, let's throw something exciting in there. And sometimes, depending on the game, it's like, you tell me what was that extra thing that went so well, or if I've got something in mind, let's roll with it. And just one last point I'll make about having that cost to failure is, especially if it's something where, from the character's perspective, it worked just fine. It's where you can play with, if your players are up for it, and especially when they're younger, they may not be, but that idea of that split between character knowledge and player knowledge.
Yes.
Bringing the players in, showing them that little cut scene that happened elsewhere in the dungeon. They know what just went horribly wrong for them. But the character is totally oblivious. And it can be a lot of fun to play with that and give them that tension, because now they know that that trip to Silent Alarm, and now the horde of goblins is coming charging up the stairwell, and they're like, oh yeah, the character is just hunky-dory. We're running for it. Everything went fine.
Or vice versa, you could have, again, I like the lockpicking is a very common skill check. You're going to have a rogue, you're going to have your lockpicks, you're going to have your disarm traps. I could all see in there, you rolled in that 20. Okay. You unlock it, easy. You know how to, do this. And you've actually managed to be so silent here that the guards just passed by and didn't even look down this hallway. And you just bought yourself another 10 minutes, before they'd come around or something like that. You could also do this.
You unlocked it and so easily relocked it.
Yeah.
It was all just one easy go, and now you've got safety at your back. Yep.
You could you could throw in, I'm thinking of this from Pathfinder perspective, just game mechanics wise. You could throw in some stuff there. It's like, okay, in D&D, I know they have this. In Pathfinder, they have it to where you do a recall knowledge, or you do like a knowledge check. And be like, you unlocked this so well that you now know this lock type. So next time you go to unlock a lock, roll a knowledge check. And if you can connect this with that type, you have advantage on the lock. And it's like that. And so then you kind of throw in little mechanics things there as well. That would be interesting little additions that didn't change the game. Like it didn't, but it did add something. Because you're right. There's also that annoyance when you do roll the nat 20. And it's like, same thing happened on that nat 20 as would have happened on an 11.
I know, because we all feel like those nat 20s are like there's only so many per game. And like, it's the exact same percentage of possibility every single time. But it feels like, oh, we wasted our nat 20 on that. Like somehow I had a choice.
Yes.
On what was about to be rolled. If I had a choice, I would always roll well. Always.
But yeah, so adding that story benefit, that little, something extra that happened, I think is a really great way. And then one thing I know also is I liked how long did it take?
Yeah.
You succeeded, but it took, and I hear on, just because it's he's one looked to by a lot of people, like Matt Mercer and Kirk Rule uses this all the time.
We can't talk about them anymore. We've already used our 3 slots of discussing Critical Role in one episode.
Have we?
I'm just kidding.
Okay.
No, we totally can.
I hear them do it. I hear Dimension 20 do it. I hear to where it is like, especially if you're in exploration phase.
Yes.
It's like in one of the games I'm playing right now, I am the scout. I'm a ranger. And I roll a 1 on my, survival check. It's like, but I have favorite terrain. I have, say it's favorite enemy or something like that. Like, I should be able to find this guy. Okay, you find them, but it takes you this long. And by the time you would, you can tell from the tracks how that they're this far ahead, and it would take you this long to get to them versus, okay, yeah, you can track them down and get there in no time. And you make it something other than you can't find them. It's now a time aspect of, oh, you read the tracks and they're, 5 hours ahead of you as opposed to just 30 minutes. It's going to take you the whole day to catch up. And that is an effect you can do rather than you can't find them. And now that whole avenue just got cut.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or maybe they're going to be holed up and ready for you when you get there, or any number of things. Exactly.
I imagine that also makes it easier to work with kids, that you're not having to mitigate that feeling of devastation for children when they've not rolled well. Because I know that can definitely be, our oldest son started asking if he could practice playing. Because
he was rolling bad.
He was rolling really badly, but he felt like he could somehow figure out, if he practiced, he could figure out how to play better. And I was like, the only way to practice, honey, is just to play. Like, there's no really practicing this. There's just playing.
It just roll the dice and it's going to come up with what it comes up. But he did feel like it was a personal failing to roll that.
And he's also an incredibly sensitive kid, too. So...
But I imagine that is a thing probably for most kids.
Yeah.
And so I do imagine that this is a really important aspect of playing with children is you can't just say, oh, you failed. You tried to unlock it. Yep, you can't get to it. Done. You can't leave it like that generally with a kid. They will get disinterested so quickly.
Nope, that's true.
Yes.
So we've talked a lot about you and your daughter and playing and whatnot, but I would like to know more just about your journey and experience with D&D and how it's kind of shaped your life in a way, because it sounds like, having talked to you for a little bit, that like D&D, or at least role-playing games, were a pretty entrenched part of your life before you had your daughter, and before you guys decided to put yourself out on the interwebs. Because that's always fun.
Yeah.
So tell us more about that and about your journey with TTRPGs.
Sure. Well, let's see. This is probably the part where I say, so it started with the red box back in the 80s, the D&D basic set.
Yeah.
I remember finding it at a used bookstore, and I was like, what is this thing? This looks so awesome.
Were they only available at used bookstores? Because I swear every story is like, I found it at a used bookstore or at a thrift mart or whatever.
Well, that's not the case. We've had
By the time I was there.
Yeah, we've had a couple of players on here, specifically some of our older players who are like,
Don't talk about Jerome that way. That's rude. Jerome, I love you if you watch this back.
Well, and then also that one father and son that we had on.
Mark and Jacob, yeah.
Where they were like, I bought the original, I think they had the white box.
Yeah, he
or something
bought
like that.
He bought the it was
but I think, I imagine, Dan, you're more in, by the time you would have been buying it, it was probably in more used bookstores than new bookstores.
I think the first time I bought like a new item, it was the rules cyclopedia for AD&D second edition.
All right.
Oh,
I remember saving money on that one
because they're expensive.
They are.
Yeah.
They never brought the prices down.
I found myself. I am a shy introverted person. You may not have noticed. Lots of practice gets me where I am today.
You're doing very well for being a shy
Thank
introverted person.
I credit RPGs and running games for a lot of my ability to just sit in front of a microphone and talk to people now, I have to admit.
Yeah.
But so I started out with that. It was the World of Greyhawk box set.
Greyhawk.
I had the Middle Earth role playing game box set. And here's the thing, I never played any of them. I just read them to death because I didn't have anybody to play with.
That's another theme that I've heard a lot from people is that they bought the books when they were younger and read them or looked at the pictures like when they were little. But then like as they got older, it was like they realized that they really, really would like to play, but there's nobody that they know that plays.
Think about the playership of D&D. We're nerds. Most nerds have a hard time with social and with having friends. We weren't the popular kid that had a party of 5 people. Stranger Things, contrary to popular opinion, Stranger Things and all these kids that automatically have 6 friends.
Yeah,
I don't think is actually the normal demographic for D&D.
So the first time I actually played, so that would have been when I was like 10, 11-ish, I guess. I was in high school, and there was one of the older kids, the cool older kids, was looking to play. And
Hellfire Club.
This was actually a band and drama club. Was where our little group came from.
Theater was ours.
Yep.
But it just reminds you, I don't know if you've seen the most recent season of Stranger Things, but you've got the older kid who runs the D&D game. And that's who they get in with. And he's the dungeon master, and he's like a year or 2 older than them in school, in high school. And that is what the Hellfire Club is in Stranger Things.
Yep.
Got it. And so we would we'd go to his place, and his mom would make these awesome egg salad sandwiches. That's one of the few things I still remember. That, and we went through a campaign that was basically Dune.
Oh, nice.
And that was my introduction to the Monty Python and the Holy Grail quotes, which I didn't understand at all because I'd never seen.
But of course you laughed
at. I wasn't one of the cool ones. Yeah, right. You laugh at and you start repeating, and everybody thinks it's funny. It's great.
So then, and then you finally 10 years later watch the actual movie, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, that's what that was."
That's what they meant about look at the bones. I had no idea.
There's just on this very random tangent. There was one that I learned this last weekend just from The Simpsons that I've said my entire life. I had no idea. And we found out, like, my mom's never watched it, and she's the one that says it. And I'm like, what? Can you remember what it was? We were sitting at the table all talking about it, and we're like, Mom, you've never even watched The Simpsons.
But she's been quoting
Nobody would play with any of you. Who would play with any of you? That one.
Yes.
That one. That was the quote. And I've said it my entire life, and I had no idea it was from The Simpsons. And I've never watched The Simpsons. Anyway, sorry. Moving on.
That's quite all right. Quite all right. Anyway, so that was where I first actually played D&D. And then there was a long break, and then I started playing in college and played for multiple years. Got that same group. We played like GURPS and White Wolf. We went through the various White Wolf games. I remember my one and only attempt going to a role-playing game club in college, and got to play Paranoia. And then, I was
I've heard
too much anxiety to go back. But
That
it was
makes
fun.
sense.
It was totally different.
Paranoia, anxiety,
yeah,
I think those go hand in hand.
So that was a lot then. So there were multiple years then of a lot of D&D and GURPS and so on. And then out of college, and a long dry spell at that point, until eventually it was like, role-playing games were a lot of fun. And looking back at it and finding a group, did D&D for a while, and then really started to find out about just how much more there was to the role-playing scene.
It's not just D&D.
It's not just D&D and this handful of other things I've played. And I have discovered, I'm one of those people. I know there's a demographic here that just gets their hands on so many games and reads them, and will probably never get the chance to play them because there's too many. But I love reading through them, finding that, and there's so many wonderful ideas for ways to just either totally unique game mechanics or ways to just tweak some game mechanics. I've come away with so many things that I've integrated into the games that.
Oh, we lost your sound.
Oh, we lost you there for a second. Oh, where'd you go?
How about?
There we go. And you're back. But
so I've integrated those in, and I know, like, I was running a 5e game, ostensibly a 5e game, at one point, but I tried so many things in there that we had to admit that was not pure 5e by a long shot.
By the time you got done, it was 5e in spirit.
Adjacent.
Yes, that's where we started.
Adjacent.
Certainly where we started. But I really love finding those ideas, not only for game mechanics, but just adventure ideas and story ideas, and so much that comes from all of these other games out there. And then ultimately, to bring it back around, getting that opportunity to play with Rachel and being able to tap things like Stacks of Goblins or Sodalitas is another good one, because people are doing so much now with these games aimed at a family friendly or made for use in schools. I mean, they're going there, and so they're designed with the concepts of really emphasizing, maybe it's just one page of rules, but one of those rules is about how you can get a game benefit by helping each other, or cooperatively doing something, or designed around that idea of trying to nudge them in that direction of playing nice together.
Yeah.
And getting a benefit from it. If they're not going to just do it altruistically, well, at least I want that roll with advantage or what have you.
Well, and that's one thing I know for us we're specifically looking at is, okay, we want to go find systems that do have mechanics or integrating some type of mechanics to where if my boys will work together, they will get, things will all work out and things will be better, stuff like that. Because we're seeing this, okay, they're uber competitive with each other. We need to get them to learn to cooperate. It's like right now we have Minecraft, and they're all supposed to be playing Minecraft. And instead, they're constantly just turning around and hitting each other with swords in Minecraft. It's like, guys, then of course. And
then they're like, oh, I just built that. Why are you taking it apart? And no, he's not letting me. The creeper's coming at me. He's not letting me in the house. I'm like, I cannot handle you kids playing together. I can't.
So that was one of the goals for this quarter was, okay, we're going to find a game that focuses on cooperation, and we're going to start playing that.
Where they can't kill each other.
Well, it's like we met, I believe, a couple weeks back with, they introduced us to that organization.
Oh, shoot. Yes. The coolness that we're cool.
Yes.
Frick.
But they introduced us. Well, we'll remember it in just a minute.
Was it World of Chords?
Yes.
Yes, World of Chords, D&D.
And they
were very cool.
Introduced us to this organization that actually has seminars and trainings on how to use positive psychology and to be, a counselor almost through your D&D games.
So
very cool.
So they have actual like certifications, and like you can get, you can go to these seminars and do X number of hours, and then have like, a certification that you're a certified, whatever. I don't remember the name of it now, but like, it's really cool because that was the whole, that was like the theme for the episode that day, was talking about that. And I thought that's such a brilliant idea, because what we, like Weston and I, are creating a homebrewed world with some homebrewed mechanics that was originally going to be for D&D 5e, but with one D&D coming out soon. Well, I don't know what's happening. Whatever.
Game system wise is a question, but it has mechanics based around simulating mental health disorders.
Oh, okay.
So it's meant, part of the campaign is all about just helping people who don't deal with it, or maybe have, family that deal with it, but they don't really know, to help them understand this is what the life is like for someone who does struggle with this.
And then on the flip side, we're creating like monsters and things like that are almost like representations, like physical representations of anxiety, of depression, of fear, that as a player you can defeat. And it's a very, very exciting project to work on, because as someone who does struggle with a lot of depression and anxiety, I can see how this is going to help people, and help, like, just in general, being able to sit down and say, okay, like, you're having a problem right now. Let's walk through a combat scenario where we manifest your anxiety and destroy it. Let's do it. Let's just go do this right now.
But
I love this idea.
The reason I bring this up is, like, that's one of the things that they talk about is, hey, you can use TTRPGs to teach, kindness, empathy, to teach, cooperation, to help with self-esteem, to all these different things that we can do. But in order to do that, you have to be able to bring the game down to their level. You can't, if you're getting bogged down with, you rolled this and so you fail, and you're doing that with young kids, you're gonna miss the magic that really is TTRPGs. And so you've got to be willing to make adjustments there and bring it to their level.
Yeah. And if I can play off of that for a second, that idea of making your own game, or hacking your own game off of something. Riding with that to build a game that the kid might be more interested in playing. If they are really focused on My Little Pony, or whatever else, certainly there are those games, at least for things like My Little Pony, out there already. But for example, my daughter and I and some of her cousins, we all really got into the Carmen Sandiego show that's on Netflix. It is so good.
Animated
it is
one.
so good.
Yeah.
And the question came up of, well, could we play that as a role-playing game? And it's like, we're gonna try. So
you totally could, though.
You could. And so I've been taking in that theme of keeping it simple, so we're not putting a lot of work into this. I'm trying to hack Sodalitas into a Carmen Sandiego version. Sodalitas is one it's another one of those I'll definitely recommend, not only because it's fun and simple and works well. It was one that was designed for use in classrooms, but it works just fine with just one-on-one or a couple of kids. I highly recommend that. But it's a very straightforward rule set, and it's so easy to then not only create whatever character you want, but if you want to do something like this, it's like, well, I want to make that in the world of X. Whatever it is the kid is super interested in right now, you can so easily do that with Sodalitas.
Yeah, with bringing our kids are big into Cuphead right now. They have the video game, and there's the show on Netflix, and so being able to do that and then have a TTRPG where it's all built in Cuphead, they would go nuts.
Yeah. So that's when I can, if you want, I can.
I'm
grab
looking.
you the,
I think I might be.
link
Is
for that
it
one.
SODALITAS?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Okay, cool. I just want to make sure there's a French version and an American.
There is, yes,
English
French,
version.
and then there's an English one.
Okay.
They've also done a set of adventures. So if you're looking for a bunch of one-page adventures, they also offer that, which are usable with whatever game system you want, but certainly work well with Sodalitas.
Which you mentioned the one page. You've mentioned the one page a lot of times, and this is an important thing. Don't try and bite off a big chunk when you're starting to play with kids. Don't go plan. Don't go say, we're going to start Curse of Strahd.
Why?
And we're going to
Why
run
not?
through all this, or we're going to, like Pathfinder, Pathfinder modules. There's like, technically the whole module is like 6 books.
The
Right.
big ones.
Yeah.
The big ones. There's
The
the
adventure
monthlies.
paths. Yeah.
The monthlies, though.
But even then, like, don't go try something like that when you're playing with young kids. If you can't fit all the content.
Says the man who began our real adventure into playing Pathfinder with Rise of the Rune Lords.
Hence why I'm talking from experience here. Because generally you're not going to be able to keep their attention that long.
No.
They're not going to be able to stay on one character or one world or one thing that long. You're going to be lucky if you can get through an hour and a half. And so if I'm like you, Dan, I invest into my campaigns. And so if you go ahead and invest a bunch of time like that, and then the kid's done after 45 minutes, and then the next time around they want to play something completely different, you then are going to have a hard time playing. You're not going to have fun either.
Yeah.
And you have to have fun.
You do.
You as the parents, as the GM, or as the whatever it's called in different game systems, you need to have fun too. Mm-hmm. So make it simple for yourself, because the more that you try to invest and then the kid doesn't give the same back, or they want to take your stuff off into weird La La Lands with pandas, then you're going to feel frustrated, and then that's going to destroy the whole thing. Mm-hmm. Keeping it to, okay, bare bones, one page, simple stuff. We are here just to play pretend for the next little while.
You got it.
Going to be your best result.
I just had a realization too. Like with kids and the whole imagination, like don't start on a huge campaign, or don't start with even a pre-written anything. If you as the GM, if you know the game fairly well, or you just are confident in your ability to make stuff up. I'm just thinking about the way that kids play intuitively with each other, and like, well, I pretend that I did this, and then the person says back, well, pretend that I did this, and like that's what our boys do. They essentially play a storytelling game without ever rolling dice. Yep. And I remember doing that as a kid. My best friend was my cousin when I was a kid. And he and I would just create these elaborate stories, and we would act them out. And like every family reunion, as soon as we got there together, it was like we started a new story. And it was like we spent all 3 days of the family reunion just telling the story to each other.
And we played, and my friends, we were all X-Men.
Yeah, we were normally knights and princess.
Yeah, we were X-Men. Generally, I was Wolverine. But
you should have been Al Borland, though.
That's not really an X-Men.
I know, but like,
work.
if we're talking about who you look like,
I was a child then.
That's true.
I didn't have a beard
like
then.
Al Borland back then. I just wanted to just really awkwardly bring up the fact that you look like Al Borland.
But that is definitely where it is there. But also this adds some more structure, because at the same time, our kids also do the whole, I shoot you with my laser. Yeah, well, I have a laser shield. Well, I have a super laser that breaks laser shields. Well, I've got a reflecting laser shield that shoots off laser.
It's the Jacob skit. Oh my gosh, what is
Jacob
his
skit?
name?
I have no idea.
XP. 3 XP3, whatever his name is.
XP to 3. He's a YouTuber that does D&D content.
He's a D&D YouTuber, and he did a whole skit about what it's like to play with 13-year-olds, and it was like, well, I'm gonna shoot my laser at him, And it's like, no, you can't do that. You have to do blah, blah. And he's like, well, it was in my backstory. I was a part of a different group, and then I'm fine. Like, it's so true though.
The game brings some structure, and I think that is needed, and it actually helps the kids to learn better how to play pretend collaboratively, because that's the thing is, like, our boys deal with this is, okay, I can play pretend, but can I play pretend collaboratively with my brothers to where we're all playing together a story where we're not, like you said with the goblins, we're not just trying to make things difficult for each other and then we're mad at each other and then they end up hitting each other. And so that's
I absolutely love this idea.
Yeah, and this is where you definitely, can be a huge tool, I think, for parents. In our day and age where our kids a lot of times don't play pretend, sometimes the way we say that we did when we were kids. But they can, and they can play pretend, but you got to play pretend with them.
Yeah.
You got to play with them. Yeah. You know, we aren't, I know for me, it looks like our kids aren't in the society to where me and my friends would just go run out of our houses and go run into these bush area. Whoops, I'm getting into Hayley's. Run into this bush area that is like, you know, down at the end of the cul-de-sac, and my parents wouldn't know where we were for 6 hours.
We really did grow up in the time period when you could do that.
We don't
now we
really
can't
do that anymore. And
you can't.
Yeah, it's a nerve-wracking thing. So
safety thing with
we
kids
gotta
now.
we gotta help provide those experiences ourselves. And I wanted to throw out, we talked earlier about the system. It's actually called Game to Grow. Which is the one we talked about with them previously. That's this whole organization. They have groups, but then they also have the workshops. Learn how the Game to Grow method. Therapeutic Game Masters certified in Game to Grow method. And it's all about using the games and how do I make this game in a way to help build certain positive psychological traits and things like that in my kids. I know it's something that we are both interested in and going to be looking into.
Very cool.
But we are at time.
We are. Dang it! Why does this always sneak up on me?
Because
Literally
we
every
bring on
single
really
time.
fun people.
Stupid time. If we are at time, I am going to respect yours and our incredible viewers. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us tonight. Thank you, Dan, from the Almost Bedtime Theater podcast. Tell everybody who may not know where to find your show.
Great. Well, thank you also.
Oh,
you turned off your mic again.
Mike.
Stop hitting that on-off button, man. Oh, nope, you did it again. Now we still can't hear you.
Oh, dear.
Oh, wait, nope, there it is.
I think you might have a short.
How about that?
There we go. Now we can hear you.
My hands behind my back.
There's a delay now, which is funny.
Oh my gosh. Okay, anyway.
Where you find podcasts, Apple or Spotify, wherever. Look for Almost Bedtime Theater. We're there.
Yes, and if you do a search for them, the very first one that comes up is the Apple Podcast link. So if you just do a general Google search, you can find them quite easily. For us, we have this show on every other Wednesday, and when it is offline, we have Tabletop Train Talks, the Filling the Space. That is with Weston and I, where it's a little bit more of an adult show in the fact that we talk about just random nerdy.
We dive a lot of times into rules. We dive into game, more intense game systems. We talk about, definitely things that, it's not focused around getting your kids to play. It's you. It's the adults. It's you and your spouse and your friends and us being adults who enjoy nerdy things.
And I get the stink eye from my husband a lot more often because I have a tendency to derail conversations. It is really cool though. We are going to have a YouTube personality, Known@One, on the show on the 28th for the Pathfinder 2nd edition and just the Pathfinder community in general. You guys will know him. He's pretty freaking awesome. So he's going to be on the show on the 28th. And next week for this show, what is the name of the show? Family Gaming Experience. We are going to be having on Raised on D&D. They have a podcast and a live Twitch show that is really, really awesome. I'm so excited to get him on. Our scheduling was weird, so this was like one of the only times that we could get him on was this next week. So we are very excited, and I know we're jumpy. So we are going to end. Thank you so
Sorry, we're jumpy because I was looking at possibly rating someone, and so I'm messing around here, and I think it caused everything to lag.
Jeez, what did you do? Oh my gosh.
Never mind. We will
So
not
we are
rate
not gonna
anyone.
rate
We will not
anybody
be
because
rating
our
everyone tonight.
technology is
Apparently,
not-
my system decided that rating will not happen.
It's not happening tonight. Anyway, so thank you so much for joining us tonight. And no, even though you are maybe a silent follower, we do still love you. And we don't have a tagline to sign off on this show yet, even though we've done it like 10 times now. We need to come up with a tagline to end the show.
If you haven't thought of a good tagline, go ahead and throw it in the chat. You can also message us. You can find Hayley at what's your Twitter handle again? It's
my Twitter handle is HayleyM_Bell.
And then you can find us on Twitter also at
Party of Two RPG Live. And Jerome, who was our silent observer, who was getting his laughs off, which is super fun. You can find him on not the tweeter, because he doesn't use Twitter. He has a Twitter, he doesn't ever use it. But you can find him on Twitch at Lost Tribes Gaming.
All right, what's Synth Night?
Synth Night. Oh man.
Must have been lurking. All right, so thank you all so very much. We love you. And
remember, it only takes two, even though that's for our other show. We're just going to use it anyway. Good night.
Good night. If I can get the stream to stop again.